Hi guys, welcome to your channel Digital Empaths, and I'm your host Sushant Ajmani. So in our today's weekend knowledge series, I'm going to touch on another interesting topic, that how to respond to an RFP. Now what is an RFP? It is request for proposal. So last week, one of my very good friend, he was asking me this question, that Sushant, how do you respond to an RFP? Because some of these RFPs that come are quite comprehensive, and the clients usually ask for multiple type of inputs as a part of that response. And you don't want to lose them because there is a budget allocated for that, money is lying on the table, and you want your organization to grab that money. Okay, and it's a matter of pride, because when you win an RFP, it's a matter of pride, and you become a part of a very big organization. And oftentimes these RFPs are multi-million dollar deals, which you don't want to lose it. So what happens is that most of these organizations who float an RFP, they do a due diligence in deciding that what kind of vendor they want them to participate in here. And these vendors could be variety of organizations. It could be your IT services companies, they could be your consulting firms, your boutique analytics firm. Since I'm a part of a digital analytics industry for last 2 decades, so most of the examples that you will hear from me in this episode will be revolving around the digital analytics ecosystem. Okay, so I might be using phrases like data infrastructure on the cloud, data visualization, advanced analytics, artificial intelligence. I might be using the terms like product management, solutioning. So these are some of the themes you might be hearing from me during this conversation. So let's take a hypothetical situation that your organization has been shortlisted to participate in an RFP. And this RFP has come from a very large CPG brand. So imagine any CPG brand in your mind. Could be Coca-Cola, could be Mondelez, okay? And the problem statement is that these CPG brands wants to set up a data infrastructure on the cloud. Okay, if you've been following this industry for the last 7 to 8 years, a lot of investment has gone into setting the infrastructure on the cloud. It could be on Azure, it could be on AWS, could be Google. But most of the large CPG, FMCG companies I have worked in the past, majority of them are biased towards the Microsoft stack. Okay, so they already have Azure shortlisted as the cloud platform. And now they're looking for a vendor who can collaborate with their internal BI and IT team in setting up a data lake on the cloud. Okay, setting up an MDM layer on top of it, setting up different tabular data models, as well as leveraging the self-service BI platform that they're contemplating about, whether it's Power BI or maybe Tableau, to be the application layer for consumption. Now, the client already has multiple data sources behind the scene. So if it's a large CPG player, so you can imagine they would have the whole SAP stack, and they would be using some kind of a transportation management system, the warehouse management system, some kind of an ERP platform would always be there. Some third-party data would also be coming, some second-party supplier data would be coming. So there will be multiple data sources. On a lower end, you can imagine like 15 to 20 data sources, and the higher end, I have seen like 45, 50 different type of data sources and coming in different formats. Could be EDI feeds, could be your JSON files, could be coming different databases, could be emails. So imagine data is quite fragmented, coming in different shape and form. Okay, and as a part of this response, the client is looking for a vendor who has an expertise in building and dealing with this kind of a cross-functional data architecture. And they're looking for a vendor who has worked on the cloud, who knows how to build scalable architectures, who understands the data security, whether as well as at the row level, the column level data securities. The vendor should know how to work with the internal legal and data security team, who could do DevOps, who can not just set up the infrastructure only, but who can also take that infrastructure and leverage it for the BI purpose, okay? Like setting up the dashboards and scorecards for the business users, as well as building some kind of a REST APIs which can be used by other vendors who are participating in their ecosystem. So now, It's a very commoditized request. Imagine that, because this is not something very niche or very new. This is a kind of problem statement almost every CPG or FMCG companies have dealt in the last few years. Okay, since the proliferation of the big data in 2010, we have seen in the last 10 years, majority of the investment has gone into setting up these data infrastructures on the cloud. So imagine your company has been shortlisted as one of the vendor to participate in that. Now, you also need to be cognizant about that apart from your organization, there could be a variety of other organizations who would be participating. It could be the IT services companies, could be your system integrators, could be the big consulting firms, it could be the boutique analytics firms, and maybe a few underdogs, okay, who may not have a very strong brand equity in the market, but they have done some decent work and they have been given an opportunity to participate. So now let's take a step back and think about that, how this identification of vendors work basically. So most of the large brands, what they do is they look at different research reports to identify what all vendors they want to participate in. So these research reports are either published by Gartner or Forrester. Okay, Gartner is a pretty authoritative body when it comes to the IT sector. And so they publish a lot of reports targeted to the CIOs of the CEOs fraternity. So imagine this RFP has come from the CIO vertical, and the CIO of a company has looked at one of the Gartner Magic Quadrant report and identified what are the vendors who are really experts in the BI and the cloud infrastructure, and they identified around maybe 25-30 companies which are plotted in that 2x2 metric, the Magic Quadrant. And imagine that from there, he has shortlisted, let's say, maybe 10 companies that he wants to participate. Though 10 is a very big number. Usually no one goes for such a big numbers for an RFP, because if the number is so big, a lot of times companies float an RFI first, request for information, before they go for an RFP, okay? So remember that before the RFP, oftentimes companies float an RFI. That's another way to filter the big cloud of vendors who are eligible to participate in there. Okay, so let's imagine that the CIO of the company has looked at a research report. From there, he has shortlisted certain vendors. Another way to identify certain vendors is that they look at their existing ecosystem, because most of the large CPG, FMCG brands, they're already working with some of the large IT services players in the market. It could be Infosys, could be TCS, Wipro, Cognizant, okay? One of these top five would always be the backbone, the operational IT backbone for these large CPG, FMCG brands. So these companies always been given a higher emphasis, higher importance, because they are already a part of the ecosystem. They're already dealing with that cross-functional data set. Okay, they might be responsible for setting up those enterprise data warehouse in the company, whether it's on DB2, it could be Teradata. And they have also set up those multi-dimensional cubes. So they know that the IT services vendor already a part of the ecosystem, so they cannot discount them, because they already have a lot of knowledge already ingrained in them. They understand the different data sources, the metadata. So of course, the amount of time these companies would take to set up infrastructure on the cloud would always be significantly less than a big consulting or maybe a boutique analytics company, because they are a part of the ecosystem. But most important part is, since they are a part of the ecosystem, the MSAs and NDAs are already in place. Hence, you are a part of this digital industry. So you might acknowledge this point that getting the MSA signed by legal teams on both ends takes a lot of time. Okay, and oftentimes what happens is it takes minimum 3 months. Sometimes it can go even to 9 to 12 months also, depending on the value of that RFP and the type of industry the client belongs to. If it's a very regulated client, like coming from a pharmaceutical, or maybe semiconductor, or maybe your telecom, maybe BFSI, so where the regulations are very tight, so a lot of due diligence gets placed while the MSAs are getting signed. So oftentimes, the second opportunity comes to those companies who are already a part of the ecosystem, because they have already gone through that painful process of getting those NDAs and MSAs signed. Third type of companies are chosen, the companies which are the close connect with the CIO, or maybe maybe the head of BI or the head of analytics. Okay, you have a close connect. You have a bias towards certain company. Okay, you know someone who is an expert in this area. You have worked with them in the previous organization, and you want them to also participate in this response. Okay, so these are the three different ways, either through the research reports, the existing vendors who are a part of the ecosystem, and the third is the close connect. Okay, the past references. Okay, the people you have very close relationship with. Now let's imagine that you are one of those companies who have been shortlisted, and what do? You have got an RFP in your mailbox, your sales team has passed that RFP to you, and the first team who get a feel of that RFP is the pre-sales team. Okay, almost every company these days have a small pre-sales team, which can be minimum 2 people, can even go to maybe 10, 15, 20 people, depending on the size of your organization. Okay, if you're a big consulting, a big IT services firm, you may have a 25, 30 people pre-sales team, which will be comprising of some pre-sales experts, some subject matter experts who are going to play the very instrumental role in constructing the responses to those RFPs. Okay, but usually most of the companies have a smaller, very leaner pre-sales team. Okay, now the pre-sales team usually are the first team which gets an opportunity to decide how to take this particular RFP document and orchestrate it. Because if you look at the key roles of a pre-sales team, they are the content facilitators, they are the content custodians on the collaborative platforms like SharePoint or on OneDrive. They are also the content aggregators from different SMEs in the company, because the pre-sales team works in a very decentralized structure, like a hub and spoke model. Okay, they are the small leaner team like a hub, and they have connection with a lot of proxies, which are your SMEs distributed in different functions. It could be an enterprise architect, could be a cloud administrator, your advanced analytics experts, your data visualization experts. Okay, so what this team does is they go through the entire RFP. They identify what are the sections for which the content is already available on the portal, what are the sections for which we might have to create the content fresh, what are the sections for which we might need some input from the executive team, what are the content that SMEs can provide. So they do the proper orchestration of that. And they call out this kickoff meeting where they discuss on this whole RFP document in detail. Okay, section by section, that which section means what the client is expecting in this section, and how to construct a response against that. Okay, so my experience is that you should always have one senior executive, always to be a part of an RFP response that creates seriousness, and also that creates cohesiveness in the team. Because if everyone is at the junior level responding, that the seriousness, that maturity, that the whole art of storytelling often gets lacked. Okay, so you want people to be committed, because remember, responding to an RFP is not a fun. It's a pain in the ass for majority of the companies. No one likes to respond to an RFP, especially your SMEs, because they are so much busy into day-to-day operational world, and suddenly for next 2 to 3 weeks they have to now participate in this particular RFP response, and that's not something very exciting for any company. Okay, so it always makes sense to have some senior executive to drive that and make sure that all the parties are working in a very cohesive manner, meeting at regular intervals, because oftentimes your pre-sales team does not have that kind of an authority, or does not have that kind of the muscle power to get the things done from everyone. Okay, so make sure always have one senior executive to be the key player in this response. Okay, the second important thing is that what are the different sections of an RFP, and how to decide which section should be given more importance. Okay, so again, I'll be a little bit biased here based on my past experience. So I would start with those sections first, which takes the most important time, and also the most important section from the evaluation committee from the client point of view. Because remember, you are competing with the IT services, the consulting firms, the boutique analytics firm, and maybe a few underdogs. So there are variety, mix of players who are participating in there. So each one of them will come up with their own story, their own spiel. Okay, some will come with a very strong brand equity, because they have a strong brand equity in the market, and they have built a credibility, they already have some big clients already in the kitty. Some companies, they will come with their process mindset, scale, okay, the distribution architecture, the army of certified people in their ecosystem. Some of the companies will come with a lot of depth, okay. I may not have the amazing clientele, I may not have a lot of workforce which is certified, but however, I have depth in this area because that's my bread and butter, okay. I've been doing cloud infrastructure setup for years. I'm a niche player. I know what my subject is, okay. So there is a variety of players participating. Each one will come with their own flavor. But remember, it's a commodity request. Whatever new way you will come up with, there will always be a lot of overlap, okay? Because if you're setting things on the cloud, of course you will talk about, oh yeah, we have a certified Azure experts, okay? We have architects, we have engineers, they know data factory, they know data bricks, they know how to set up the data pipelines, they know blob storage, they know. So all that lingo, almost everyone will use it, okay? Everyone will start putting some kind of an architecture diagram. So how would you differentiate yourself, okay? What is a way to differentiate? So the most important way to differentiate is the whole art of solutioning, okay? So solutioning plays a very, very critical role here. So what do you need to do is that when you get an RFP, you need to decide how to solution that particular response, okay? What does that mean? Basically, how to orchestrate the approach to solve that particular problem. What are the different inputs and output criteria are going to be? What are the different assumptions you're going to be taking as a part of your solution creation? What is an expected output? What will be the measurement framework to gauge the success of that particular initiative? How would you scale? What are your lessons from the past experiences in the similar area? What are the tips? What are the gotcha, some of the goof ups that you have done? How to make things compliant with the GDPR and maybe CCPA guidelines. So you need to think from all those angles while constructing your solution. And it takes a lot of time. So do not defer that particular section till the end. Because if you have spent a quality time in the first 2 weeks on that particular section, rest of the RFP construction, response construction would not take that much time. So it's very important, start with a solution. Okay, that what is the problem statement that the client have asked? What is my proposed solution for that? Why my solution is a better solution than for some of the other competition in the market? So you need to give some references here. And what are the assumptions that you are taking? Okay, what are the past learnings while doing the similar type of architectures? Because remember, data security is the most important aspect here, because anytime someone talks about cloud infrastructure, there are two detractors you need to deal with, the legal team and the data security team, who would come and intervene at every step to make sure that you are in a compliant with the GDPR and CCPA guidelines. You know the different ISO 27000, the policies, the rules, you understand those things. And so they want to make sure that you understand those guidelines. So it's very, very important that you talk about those elements as a part of your solutioning. Always given architectures. Share a couple of different types of architectures, the real architecture, not the Google image architectures, okay? The architectures that you have built for the other clients in the past. Talk about scale, okay? How would you scale, okay? What is the total cost of ownership? Okay, remember that a lot of times CIOs expect that the total cost of ownership should decline year over year. It should not increase year over year, because there will be some economies of scales are going to kick in. Okay, and so you need to think about what is the TCO in the year 1, what is the TCO in the year 2 and year 3, and what kind of a team structure that you're going to be. Are you going to play an FTE game? You're going to play a consulting game, a value game? Is it going to be a mix of both? Okay, so talk about those elements. That's very, very important as a part of the solutioning aspect. Pricing is the most important part, okay? Because if you're putting a solution, what type of approach you are taking? Are you just putting some resources in the client infrastructure? Are you going to be putting some kind of a managed services kind of a stack where you would be managing on behalf of the client? Are you going to be deploying some third-party platform like Cloudera or Mapper or some other stack, managed services stack? Are you be going to do something from the scratch? Do you have your own accelerators, your own plugins? Talk about those things which gives client some kind of a confidence that you are the experts in this particular area. You have a depth in this particular area. You have done this work. You had been in the trenches in the past. It's not that you're just talking academically. Okay? Because remember that the evaluation committee on the client hand, they would have mix of people. They would have people from legal team, the architecture team, the IT team, the BI team, the business team. There will be a mix of people in that panel who would be evaluating your RFP response. So you can't be too technical and you can't be too English and theoretical, because you need to cater to different types of audiences who will be consuming that. Okay? So when you are focusing on the solutioning, the architecture, the resourcing, the pricing, give that particular section the maximum importance in the first 2 to 3 weeks. Because once you have alignment on that among your core team who's participating in the RFP response, rest of the things will not take time. Okay. Another important section is executive summary, which is also the first section in the RFP response. And executive summary basically talks about not about your company. A lot of time we have this misconception that executive summary is about me. Then remember, you are competing with some of the big brands who are participating in the RFP. Okay? Some of them have a very strong brand equity in the market. They have hundreds and thousands of clients already in there. Some of them are very big, eminent brand, maybe the top 100 Fortune 500 companies or something like that. So imagine if they start talking about them, of course, their executive summary will always have a higher weightage than for any boutique analytics firm or for an underdog. So the objective in executive summary is not about you only. It's also about why you are the right vendor for this particular RFP response. Why you feel you would play an instrumental role as compared to the other players who are participating in this particular response. It's more about why, not what only. So oftentimes we do a mistake that we focus too much on what, we write a whole 2-page biography of our own organizations, and we lose the customer, because clients don't want to know who you are only. They also want to know that why you feel you are the right vendor for this particular problem statement. So that's very, very important. Okay. Third section, which I feel very, very important, is those case studies. Okay. The work that you've done in the past. Do not shy away in talking about the work you have done in that particular industry. Even if you have never worked in that industry, you've worked in some other industries, talk about it, the scenarios which might be at par with what the client is asking for. Maybe you have not set up the data infrastructure for any large CPG brand, but you have set up in the BFSI sector. Maybe you have set up in the telecom sector, okay? So talk about it, okay? Do not restrict yourself, oh my God, I have not worked in a CPG, FMCG space, so I don't know what to mention. Talk about the other experiences, because you're talking about a similar type of stack over there. Maybe the data type may be a little bit different, okay? But the overall stack, the architecture would not vary too much from industry to industry. Those basic components, those nuts and bolts will not be radically different. So talk about it, okay? There's nothing to hide over there. Talk about the scale, that after the system is deployed, what is that scalable architecture looks like? How would you scale? What the next 2 years or 3 years looks like? What are the other type of deliverables you will be producing? Don't restrict yourself to just architecture only, because even though they have asked for that we are looking for a vendor who can help us set up an infrastructure on the cloud, do not assume that the relationship will end over there. Ultimately, everyone wants to capitalize on that data. They want an ROI out of that data. They want to convert that data into some kind of an action. Okay, they want the data to convert into some kind of an insight, some kind of a knowledge should derive from there. So that's the big money game. That's the value game. The infrastructure and all those things, it's a more efficiency and cost game. The value will come when you start producing those insights, those actions, because that's when they will start seeing the ROI from that multi-million-dollar investment that they've done. Because It's not just an investment on us as a company, but also on their own internal human capital, investment on the cloud stack that they're going to be investing on. Okay, so it's a big investment. So talk about why you feel you are that scalable partner, the value partner, because everyone wants to do business with a value partner, not just an infrastructure partner. So show your dashboard, some kind of amazing scorecards that you have set it up, okay, some kind of an APIs that you have built, okay, some kind of an interesting models that you have built on the top of that particular data lake, okay. If you are talking about CPG, talk about the work that you have done in the supply chain, because that's the backbone of the CPG, okay. Talk about some of the demand forecasting, demand sensing models that you have built, okay. Some kind of a dynamic pricing recommendations, maybe any kind of a hub optimization, or some kind of a transportation cost optimization, some kind of a supply chain cost optimization models that you've built. Talk about some simulations, okay, some kind of a recommendation-based models. So talk about those value things, so the client should feel that this relationship is going to long last, okay. It's not going to end after the infrastructure gets over, okay. So talk about the value. That is the most critical part, okay. Now, these are some of the very critical parts. Then the risk mitigation. If there are some risk, what is your process of mitigating those risks? Okay, because when you're setting up infrastructure in the cloud, there are always multiple type of risk around, say, skills, employees leaving it, data security related risk, legal aspect is there. So there are multiple risk element that comes into picture. So what is your organization strategy in mitigating those risks? Okay, what kind of a resource pool that you have, your bench strategy that you have, what kind of a resource placement strategy? Is it going to be hybrid? Some people will be sitting in offshore versus onshore. What is that right mix looks like? Okay, and also talk about how would your team will collaborate with the internal team, because you don't want to eat up their jobs. You want to complement with them. You want to make sure that you are equally leveraging their internal human capital, because they're not choosing you as a vendor to replace their existing workforce. They want experts, skills to fill the void which they currently have, someone who can give them that scale, that visibility, okay? So remember that it's a matter of collaboration, not replacement of an existing team, okay? So talk about these important elements, and like this, there are lots of other small elements, but in this particular episode, I wanted to just focus more on the most critical aspects, so that when you design your RFPs, give importance to those sections first in the first few weeks, which will take you to the second round. The objective is to go to the second round, not to win, because the winning requires a different strategy for each stage, because after you submit a response, the committee on the client side can take minimum 15 days to maximum 30 days to evaluate it, depending on the number of vendors who are participating. Minimum 15 days are always there, okay? Maximum it can go to 30 to 45 days. So let's say they took 30 to 45 days. After that, they have shortlisted certain vendors, okay? And the selection process could be done in multiple ways, okay? They might look at your pricing, your solutioning aspect, your depth, your breadth of the solution, your scalability, the value you will be adding over the period of next few years, your understanding about our domain, our ecosystem, the kind of models, the kind of value you have produced for other clients, the type of clients you're already working with, the type of references you have provided. All those different aspects plays a very important role. Of course, pricing is the most important part in the top three, but I feel solutioning is the winning strategy. If you're solutioning, your depth and breadth is really, really nice, you have a high likelihood to go to the second round. And when it goes to the second round, oftentimes clients involve the most toughest team, the procurement team, okay? The pricing team, the team who comes and negotiate, the team who comes and evaluate you, what is your basis of pricing, what assumptions you have taken, what is your pricing function looks like, what are those input criteria to the pricing function, okay? How your pricing will scale or go down year over year, okay? What is the total cost of ownership in the first year, the second and the third year? So they will evaluate you on that particular front. So procurement team oftentimes comes at the second round to look at and check your pricing strategy. Once you bypass that, you may be involved to go through an interview process where you would be asked to come and present, maybe on the Zoom call, or maybe go to the client premises and present your entire solution in detail. That's the most critical meeting where they will grill you, go deeper into your assumptions, your architecture diagrams, the work you have done, and all the amazing storytelling you have done in your RFP response. So they will grill you on that particular front. And that's the most critical round, because you need to there empathize with the people sitting in that team. You don't need to make them feel intimidated. You need to make them feel like you are that partner who can take them to places. That's the most important. It's not a question of intimidation, it's a question of building that connection and empathy. Once you go through that particular round, fourth round is oftentimes the references check. Okay, they may check your references, maybe talk to your top 2 or 3 customers where you have done the work. Okay, so you need to identify the key clients who can be a good references for you, identify those people, maybe prepare them upfront and tell them that you might get a call from these particular companies and what are the different questions they might ask you, the type of work you have done. So it's always better to prepare your references for that. It should not be like a sudden shock, or some person is getting a call from your large CPG brand. Hey, do you work with this company? So make sure those references are very well prepared, as well as you should know what type of companies you want to give the references. It should be from the similar industry, so that it gives you more weightage. And after the references are done, oftentimes clients, what they do is they again invite you to their premises. That's when the top 2 or 3 players are left. Okay, the final threes, the finalist. They invite them, they give them maybe a 45 to 90-minute slot, come with your presentation, and again present it. Okay, why you are the right vendor, what is the solution. You need to again talk about that, talk about pricing. Okay, what is the pricing strategy? And after that final round, they shortlist 2 vendors, okay, as the winner. They don't know who is the second one, but they shortlist 2 players, because there's always a problem that once they choose a winner, sometimes the winner goof up, okay? Because oftentimes what the clients do is when they choose a winner, they give them a small proof of concept to start with. No one starts with $1 million program on day 1, okay? They may give them like a 2 or 3 months proof of concepts to prove your valor, okay? To prove that you are the right player for this. And if the first winner goof ups there, then the second runner-up gets an opportunity to participate in there. Okay, but oftentimes after the RFP process is done, the winners get a chance to go through a proof of concept to prove their value. And after they are done that round, they've done really, really well. Then this whole MSAs and NDAs and all those things, which can take maybe 3 months, maybe 6 months, could be sometimes a year. So this is the overall process for an RFP, okay? And it's a matter of pride for any company to get to participate in any RFP responses, and I enjoy it. I've done multiple RFP responses in the last 2 decades. Some of them I've lost also, some of them I won also, depending on which companies I worked in the past. So I would highly urge that if you're responding to an RFP, give more importance to your solutioning and then just focusing on the other smaller elements. Give more importance over there. Okay, so I'm always open to hear your thoughts, your perspectives, your constructive feedback, and you can post your comments below this video. If you have any suggestions for a different topic that you want me to cover in the following weeks, I would be more than happy to cover that. So until then, stay safe, stay connected, and hasta pronto.